My name is Scott Duvall, and I'm the Member of Parliament for Hamilton Mountain. I'm coming to you from my riding, and I want to acknowledge that the City of Hamilton is situated upon the traditional territories of the Erie, Neutral, Huron, Wendat, Haudenosaunee, and Mississaugas. We're here today because Hamilton is going through a housing crisis. Hamiltonians are seeing their rents rise to unacceptable levels. They are being forced out of their homes because of rent evictions or landlords that use abusive tactics like neglect to give them no choice but to leave. I've spoken directly to seniors and persons with disabilities here in the city, and let me tell you, the troubles they have with affording to keep a roof over their heads are becoming extreme, and they desperately need a fix now. According to Oxford Economics, Hamilton is now the third most unaffordable city for housing in North America. Rents for two bedrooms units have jumped 25% between March 2020 and March 2021. And over the last decade, rents have risen 49%, more than double the increase in the cost of living. And 45% of the renters live in unaffordable housing, where more than 30% of their income is spent on rent. This is a situation that has gotten out of control. We need action now to stop the crisis from getting worse. New Democrats are fighting for investments and affordable housing in Hamilton and across the country, and are fighting to bring this housing crisis to an end. I'd like to turn now this over to my friend and the NDP candidate for Hamilton Mountain, Malcolm Allen, for a few words. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Scott, and thanks for articulating what the serious issue of the housing crisis across this country, but more specifically to Hamilton Mountain. You know, as Scott has described it, it is a crisis. It's a crisis for folks who are trying to buy a first house who are being priced right out of the market and forced to leave their home community and look elsewhere, perhaps, for cheaper housing and cheaper alternatives. And in other cases, simply can't afford the rents that are being charged. And what happens to them is they end up trying to live from place to place, which really is disruptive to families and to communities in general. And so really important that we address this issue and we do it in a timely manner, and that we do it such that it actually helps folks. And the Democrats have proven, especially during this last 16 months of COVID, that we're the party and we're the caucus that actually gets that done. And the person who has led that fight has been our leader, Jagmeet Singh, who time and time again has stood up for folks across this country to make sure that ultimately they're taken care of. And there's no better person, I believe, in this country than Jagmeet Singh to lead our party and to continue to fight for folks in this housing crisis and finally enable folks to live. So I give you our leader, Jagmeet Singh.
Thanks so much, Malcolm. And thanks so much, Scott, for being here. This is a serious crisis that we're up against when it comes to housing. We knew that this was a crisis before the pandemic, and the pandemic has only made things worse. Before the pandemic, I would hear from people across the country who would tell me they can't find a place to call home. They just can't do it. They couldn't find a place to rent, and they couldn't even dream of a place to own. And that situation, like I said, has only become worse. We were seeing incredible levels of unaffordability. And as Scott was saying, Hamilton right now is the third most unaffordable place for housing in all of North America, which is pretty staggering. So you got to do something about it. There's no question about it. What we've seen from the Liberal government so far is a lot of announcements saying that it's a serious crisis, but then no real action. After 6 years of Liberals being in power, people aren't better off. People aren't in a better position to find housing. In fact, we could say people are in a worse position. So we know what we need to do. We need to tackle this housing crisis like we really want to beat it. And there's two approaches that we want to take. One is we got to get at the speculation. We know that foreign ownership is driving up the cost of housing. We know that money laundering is driving up the cost of housing. And we know that flipping houses is driving up the cost of housing. Rent evictions, and when we're seeing properties be purchased, renovated, flipped for more. We've got to get at those pressures that are driving up the cost of housing, but we also need to build more affordable housing. We've got to take this on as a serious challenge. The same way after the World Wars, we saw a massive investment in building housing, which resulted in a lot of the cooperative housing that we see across this country. A lot of the post-war homes that were built, which were the first homes that people could afford. We want to invest massively in building new affordable homes across this country, from homes and townhouses and apartments, rental, cooperative. We need to build housing that addresses all the range, from people who are low income to no income, subsidized, and assisted living homes. We need to make sure people can find a place to call home. And this is something that New Democrats are committed to doing. I'm committed to fighting this challenge. I'm committed to making sure we build housing, that we take this on like a real challenge, and we are committed to going beyond just the announcements, but really making an investment so we can build homes for people. Donc, c'était une crise avant la pandémie, la crise du logement, et c'était une crise maintenant, c'était empiré par la pandémie. Et on sait qu'on doit faire face aux pressions qui augmentent les prix de logement, et on doit aussi investir massivement dans les logements. Et c'est exactement ce qu'on est prêt de faire. Le gouvernement libéral a fait des annonces, mais rien n'a changé après 6 ans. Effectivement, après 6 ans du pouvoir, après 6 ans au pouvoir, le gouvernement libéral n'a pas amélioré la situation. Effectivement, la situation a empiré. Moi, comme chef, je m'engage de lutter contre cette crise, de faire les investissements et de mettre fin aux pressions qui augmentent les prix de logement. And so I really thank you all for being here. And I'm really honored to have Hannah here, who's going to share a personal story. I think it's so powerful to hear from people who are experiencing these challenges. And Hannah, before you speak, I want to say your voice is the voice, not just of your situation, but you speak the reality of a lot of people, that what they're going through. So thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing your story. And I pass the mic now to Hannah, who will share a personal story about the struggles with housing in and around Hamilton and across Ontario. Thank you, Hannah.
Thank you, Jagmeet. I do want to say that, my partner and I are very fortunate. If you come to Hamilton, you'll see there's so much wealth disparity, and it continues. And I think it's amazing that, we're fighting for everybody, no matter what position they're in. My partner and I, we used to live in Toronto. So we lived together for 5.5 years in Toronto, and it got to a point that we couldn't afford to live there. We decided that money wasn't getting us very far, and we decided to shift our life and move. We're both in hospitality. We have been for a very long time. I've been bartenders, managers. I'm now the taproom manager of a brewery in Hamilton, and we had the opportunity to allow ourselves to move with our jobs. There's breweries and bars everywhere, and we settled in Kitchener-Waterloo because we could get a job there, and it seemed like the right move at the time. We never lived there, we didn't know anybody there, but there were jobs, and we thought that it would get us a little bit closer to being able to settle and find a home and be able to purchase a home. We only lived in Kitchener-Waterloo for just shy of 2 years because we found that it was unaffordable. This was before the pandemic. This was about 3 years ago. And we realized that we had already been kind of priced out of that market, and we didn't want to live outside of the city because there were no jobs there. We had to live within kind of an urban center. And we decided to move to Hamilton. We both got opportunities at breweries. My partner is a general manager of a brewery in Hamilton in the East End. And like I said, I'm here at Grain and Grit. And we were ready to call Hamilton our home. So we moved last March, right before the pandemic. And the discussion was always, this is where we're going to settle because we thought we could afford a home in Hamilton. So we started the discussion, we started looking, we started seeing, how much we could get if we put down a down payment. We started saving, and just one day we stopped talking about it. It was unspoken. We just realized that we were so far away from being able to achieve that. And it became sort of disappointing and unsettling. We were ready to grow roots. We absolutely love Hamilton. I want this to be our home. We want to build a family here. We want to be able to contribute to our economy in Hamilton. We would love to start businesses in Hamilton. And buying a home felt like that first step to be able to make this happen. The housing market, like you said, Scott and Malcolm, it's gone up more than our wages have. And that's, no fault of anybody's, but it's so unachievable. Because of this, we feel like our lives, we can't take the next step. Like we said, we'd love to start a family. We would like to make roots somewhere and be able to build our lives within this wonderful community. Hamilton is so rich and wonderful, and we just can't do it. And then, I always feel like our parents don't feel the pressures. A lot of millennials are trying to afford homes, and they're relying on their parents to help them do that. I want my parents to be able to enjoy their retirement. I want my partner's parents to be able to enjoy their retirement too. And they feel the pressures of not being able to help us make that next step. It shouldn't be on another generation. Yes, obviously we're family and we help each other. But we would love to be able to make steps so we could afford a home and just feel that stability in our life that we can't feel with renting. But Hamilton is an amazing place to live, and I look forward to the day that housing is affordable and Jagmeet can do amazing things to make that happen for us, so we can feel that stability in where we live.
Thanks so much, Hannah. I really appreciate your story. And like I said before, that struggle, leaving one city, leaving your friends and your connections behind to try to go somewhere else so you could afford a home, and then again not being able to find it, that is the struggle of a lot of people. And now you want to make Hamilton your home, and you shouldn't have to leave. And that's a reality, that a lot of people want to stay in their communities. It would be a completely different thing if someone wanted to go off and explore a different city. But when you want to build roots in a community and you simply can't because you can't afford to, that is heartbreaking. That is wrong. People should be able to stay in the communities where they want to lay down their roots. So we are committed to fighting to make sure people like Hannah, so that you can have a place to call home, so you can find a place that's affordable. And I want to make something really clear. Folks start to feel like it's their fault. Hannah, I know folks start to blame themselves. Maybe I didn't save enough, or maybe I didn't do this. The reality is the housing market as it is right now is completely unaffordable. Like people, only a third of Canadians could buy a home right now. And that is a staggering figure as well. Only a third of Canadians right now, if they had to purchase a home right now, given the housing prices, only a third of the people in this country could actually afford a place. There's clearly something wrong, and we want to fix that. We are determined to fix that. So thanks so much, Hannah. Thanks again, Scott and Malcolm. And with that, I'll pass it to Nina, who will then take questions from the media. Yes, thank you.
Thank you, merci. So I would like to invite members of the media to please use the raise hand function to ask your question and follow up. And I would also kindly ask you when I call on you to please identify the media outlet that you are representing today. J'invite les membres des médias d'utiliser la fonction lever la main au bas de la page pour poser votre question et question de suivi. I have Bobby from the CBC. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much. I hope you're all having a great day. My question is for Mr. Singh. So you've talked about how housing is an issue, affordability is an issue, and you said that you're committed to changing it. What are you actually going to do to fix this issue?
Thanks so much, Bobby, for the question. So we're looking at this problem, and there's really a two-pronged approach we've got to take. One is there's a lot of pressures that are driving up the cost of housing. We need to tackle those pressures. So speculation, one of the drivers of speculation is foreign ownership. A lot of foreign money is basically parking in housing because housing is stable in Canada and it's a great investment. And that is wrong. Housing shouldn't be seen as a stock market. It shouldn't be used as a financial commodity. It should be for people to find a place to call home. And right now that is happening. So BC put in place a foreign buyers tax. And it was effective in helping to cool some of the out of control increases in pricing. We want to take that idea and make it national. So put in place a national foreign buyers tax, which would discourage people putting their money in Canada as a way to drive up the cost of housing. Secondly, money laundering, something not really well known, but it is actually a major factor. And in BC, there was serious investigations into how it directly increased the cost of housing. So we want to tackle that. The best place to tackle money laundering is at the federal level, and it is directly contributing to the rise of cost of housing. We also know that domestically, the property flipping that's going on is driving up the cost of housing. And there are ways for us to discourage that property flipping through taxation. We need to make sure that homes, again, are not being used just to make money. These are very precious for people places for people to call home, and we want to make it that. Then on the supply side, the other approach is supply. We need to just build more affordable housing. It has not been something that's been done over the past number of decades. Both federal and conservative governments haven't actually made that investment. In the past, there was significant investments made in housing. And that's why we saw a lot of cooperative housing units, buildings and apartments, which were owned by the tenants. Those co-op housing were great solutions. Not-for-profit housing was a great solution, but there were investments made in the past that have not been made for decades. And so we were behind the ball in terms of the availability of affordable homes. So to fix that, we want to invest massively in building more homes. We look at this as a job creation. It'll create jobs in all communities. It's also because we need to make sure people have a place that they can actually afford. And we want to build a range of housing from people like Hannah, young families that are starting, young professionals. We want to make sure there's housing for people with low or no income. So we really want to build the wide range of housing that are communities that our country really needs. And that's our commitment.
Okay, I appreciate that. So in terms of speculation, you mentioned a foreign buyers tax as a specific means to trying to fix that. Can you be more specific when you say that you're fighting money laundering at a federal level, using taxes to fix property flipping, building more affordable housing? Could you be a bit more specific? What does that actually look like? How much money would there be involved in there?
Sure. So with the money laundering, which is directly contributing to the cost or the rise of cost in housing, the federal department that is tasked with that job, I asked this question of the Prime Minister a number of times before the pandemic. There is a federal department tasked with money laundering, and it is not staffed up. So there is really no work being done at the federal level to actually tackle money laundering. So what we would do is staff up that department, make sure it has the adequate resources to actually tackle this problem. And then with respect to flipping that's going on, we know that some of the reason why people are able to buy and flip homes is because there's a capital tax gain loophole that makes it advantageous to flip homes. We would close that loophole in the capital tax gain or the capital gains taxes so that it is not something that's being incentivized. Right now, the tax system incentivizes flipping homes. That can't be the way things continue. We need to change that. So those are some of the concrete measures. And then when it comes to housing, we want to build 500,000 new homes across this country, whether that is apartments, co-op homes, just building an actual home, a freehold. We need to build more homes. We need to build them, and we need to build them massively. Our target is 500,000, and we've put forward proposals on going above and beyond what the National Housing Plan is with additional funds so that we can actually build those homes.
Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup. I would just like to remind members of the media to please use the raise hand function at the bottom of the page to ask your question and follow up. Un petit rappel d'utiliser la fonction lever la main au bas de la page pour votre question et question de suivi.
Just while we're waiting for the next question, Nina, there's a note that said that I cut out when I was talking about the department. I'll just finish that question real quick while we wait for the additional question. So there is a department at the federal level that is responsible for tackling money laundering. What was discovered was that that department was not staffed up. There was no staff basically working on money laundering at the national level, which is where it should be worked on. So what I would do, and what I asked the Prime Minister to do, is to staff up that department with adequate resources and staffing so they can actually do their work to tackle money laundering, which is directly contributing to the rising cost of housing.
Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup. So I do not see any more questions. There are no more questions. So this concludes our press conference. I just saw a hand go up. Bobby with the CBC, please go ahead.
Thank you very much. How do we know that you can actually get this done? Because, I mean, obviously, even if you do get into office, you still have to get this voted in. You have to get this approved. I mean, how can we know for sure that this is actually going to happen?
Well, one of the things that I rely on when it comes to how we know what we can do, like how can we envision the change that we want to see happen? One of the proof points is we've done this in the past. After the World Wars, Canada as a nation, we decided that we needed to build more housing. And we saw massive investments in cooperative housing and post-World War homes. A lot of those homes were the first homes that families could afford. That's something that we did in the past. And we looked at what we did. We actually made it a priority and put a lot of money towards making those investments and building those homes. Then there was a lull. From the 90s onwards, there was a massive reduction in funding when it came to housing. And as a result, from the 90s to present, over those 3 decades and more, we've seen a a significant reduction in availability of affordable homes. It's no surprise that we've ended up where we are. There hasn't been that investment at the federal level. So my commitment is, when we form government as New Democrats, our goal will be to make housing a priority. We see this as a great job creator. People need jobs. We need to create jobs. This will stimulate the economy, and it will build homes that people can afford. We've done it in the past, and we can do it again.
Thank you. And if you do enter office, you're saying that this is a priority. What's your timeline for this? When will we see these changes implemented?
Well, I would put this as a top priority. So this would be something I would work on immediately. Right away, we could make the changes necessary to cool the market when it comes to those speculative price, the drivers that are driving up the cost of housing. We could immediately put in place those measures right away. And then we would immediately earmark those funds so they are delivered to CMHCs, they go to projects, and we start building that housing. I've spoken to a lot of municipal leaders, and they are ready also, but they need a partner who's willing to work with them to build more affordable homes. We know there's a lot of federal buildings that are not being used right now in federal land that can be converted into affordable housing. There are a lot of options, and it really is a matter of will. I have the will, and I would make this a priority, given how much of a concern this is across the country. It is a unifying crisis, and we have the commitment to fix this problem.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I'm just going to check one last check to see if there's any more questions. Juste un dernier rappel, voir s'il y a des questions. Bobby, did you have another question?
Yes, I do.
Please go ahead.
So in terms of these commitments, obviously you'd be in a federal office. How much of these 500,000 new homes would we see in Hamilton?
That's a great question. We've been asked this question across the country. So we would target communities that are hardest hit. We know that the housing crisis is one that is national. It's across the country, but there are certain communities that are harder hit than others. And as Scott and Malcolm and Hannah pointed out, we've got independent evidence that Hamilton is right now the third least affordable community in all of North America for housing. So Hamilton would be a priority. We haven't laid out exactly how many houses would be in each community, but I can say confidently that Hamilton would be a priority need given how unaffordable it is right now.
So no set number on how many homes in Hamilton, but you're saying that it would be at the top of it would be getting more than most other communities.
Yeah, it would be proportional to the need. And we know that the need is so great in Hamilton that we would have to make massive investments to help people out.
All right, so I don't see any more questions. Je ne vois plus de questions. Alors, ceci conclut notre conférence de presse. This concludes our press conference. Thank you very much. Merci.
Thanks all. Thanks, Hannah, again. Thanks, Scott. Thanks, Malcolm.
Thank you.